An infrared laser is pointed straight at this lens, and there is nothing to see. 2,000 nanometers past the red end of anything a human eye can register. But the little window in the glasses is glowing. Deep red at first. Turn the beam up, and the red slides toward orange, then yellow, and a cold cyan bleeds in underneath. Nothing swapped a filter, nothing rendered a frame. The material itself changed color because the light hitting its far side got stronger. Now change what you send instead of how much. Drop to 980 nanometers, and the window sits somewhere else on the color wheel entirely. How brightly it glows tracks how much infrared arrives. What color it glows tracks which infrared. And there is no camera behind it, no processor, no frame. Here is the demonstration that makes it click. They put a polished silicon wafer over a stencil spelling BIT. To your eye, that wafer is a solid gray mirror. But silicon is transparent at 1550 nanometers. Shine that through, hold the eyeglass behind the wafer, and the letters simply appear on the lens, glowing. Slide the masks, rotate them, and the shapes track live. So, is this night vision? Can you see someone's body heat? No. Body heat comes out around 8 to 14 microns, nowhere near this device's band. And inside its own band, a room temperature scene radiates about 100 millionth of a watt per square centimeter. The faintest infrared this paper plots is a full milliwatt. Something has to light the scene with infrared first. What it buys is something a monochrome night vision tube cannot. The world is already full of invisible infrared beams, the emitters ringing a security camera, the laser in a LiDAR unit. Covert illuminators run at 1550 precisely because standard goggles are blind that far out. Through an intensifier, the ones you can see at all are the same green smear. Through this, 980 and 1550 land on different colors. You would know which beam you were standing in. That is the author's proposal, not an outdoor test. The work comes from Jay Mu and Xin Tang's group at the Beijing Institute of Technology, published in Science Advances at the end of July. Their starting point is a fact about you, not the detector. Human vision is mediocre at judging steps in brightness, and very good at telling hues apart. So every earlier device that fed infrared into the eye as brightness was using the weaker channel. Against the standard thresholds for what a person can just barely notice, brightness alone needs about 24 milliwatts per square centimeter of change before you catch it. Adding color drops that to 1/10 of a milliwatt, nearly 200 times finer. A calculation, not a wearer trial. The mechanism has two halves, and the first is a powder. Mercury Telluride quantum dots, 3.94 nanometers across, grown to almost no spread in size, because in a dot that small, the energy levels are discrete, like rungs, and a range of sizes smears them into a blur. The first absorption peak sits at 2 microns, 0.62 electron volts. A 2-micron photon has just enough for the lowest rung. A 980 photon carries twice that and opens several transitions at once. So shorter wavelengths hand the device more carriers for the same power arriving. The authors think one photon may sometimes kick out 2 electron hole pairs, but they never measured that. Either way, shorter wavelength in, more current out. The second half turns that current into a color. The carriers cross into an OLED with 2 emitting layers stacked one behind the other. Nearest the detector, a red emitter, iridium PIQ, in a host material. Behind it, a cyan emitter, FIR-PIC, in the same host. And between them, the team left a deliberate step. The red dopant's highest occupied level sits at minus 5.24 electron volts, the cyan one at minus 6.06. 0.8 of an electron volt of climb, put there on purpose. At low current, holes arriving from the detector drop into the red dopant and stop. They do not have the push to climb, so the device glows red, and only red. Raise the infrared, raise the current, and those red sites fill up. Once they are full, the next holes have nowhere to fall. They stay up in the host, travel further, clear the step, and reach the cyan layer. Cyan switches on alongside the red. Carriers per second have become a color, and no comparator circuit did that. A band diagram did, because someone chose where to put the step. Here is the experiment that proves the step is doing the work. They built a second device, same two dopants, same concentrations, co-deposited into one shared layer, so both sit the same distance from the arriving carriers, with no barrier between them. Same power sweep, 1 to 2600 milliwatts per square centimeter. The color barely moves. Same materials, same light, no staircase, no effect. All of it packs into 23 grams. With an active window of 3.5 square centimeters, you can see straight through. Which is the moment for a correction. Humans have already seen infrared in color. In 2025, a team at the University of Science and Technology of China put upconversion contact lenses on volunteers. 808 nanometers to green, 980 to blue, 1532 to red. 3 wavelengths, 3 engineered channels. What is new here is that there are no channels. One sheet across a broad band, out to 2 microns. The color sliding continuously, instead of snapping between 3 prepared answers. Now the parts that are not ready. It needs a bias voltage. The supplement calls lowering it critical for anything portable. Only 3.85% of arriving infrared photons come back out visible, 1 in 26. And an ambiguity sits inside the elegance. Color depends on wavelength and intensity together, so a weak short wavelength and a strong long one can land on the same hue. Uncalibrated, a color does not name a wavelength. Then the material. Mercury telluride is classified in bulk as fatal if swallowed, inhaled, or absorbed through skin. A sealed film is not loose powder, and nothing says this prototype is dangerous, but the paper describes its encapsulation exactly once, as part of the 23 grams. No composition, no breach testing, no long wear data, and nobody has publicly put the question to the authors. The paper floats a second use, and it deserves a clear label: speculative. An implant that converts infrared into whatever color an engineered light-sensitive protein responds to for people whose photoreceptors are gone. What they showed is narrower. A blue-emitting converter fired cultured neurons carrying channel rhodopsin, and mice and human eyes gave electrical responses through one. Nothing was implanted, no vision was restored, and at the longer wavelengths, the output does not activate that protein at all. So what to watch next is unglamorous. The operating voltage, the size of the window, whether the encapsulation survives being worn. But the idea underneath is worth keeping. Every attempt to give a person infrared sight so far went after the detector. This one went after the last few centimeters, the part where the signal has to fit through a human, and picked the wider pipe.